Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Coffee with a Cop. Today we have Savannah Hopp, who's a special guest from the Arizona Supreme Court. She is a CASA outreach specialist. CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates, and they're citizen volunteers who are appointed by a judge and trained to serve as the voice of children who are in foster care. Today, there are about almost 14,000 students or children waiting for a CASA volunteer to help them find a safe and permanent home. Welcome, Savannah. You can start your program when you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the intro. Again, my name is Savannah. I am with the CASA of Arizona, and CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate. So this month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about that, and then I'll go into the CASA program. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to shoot them in the chat box. We'll go over them afterwards. And thank you for having me. All right, so October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. You'll see some of our court buildings that are actually lit up purple. It's to make domestic violence better known in the community so we can prevent this from happening further in our community. So most people know domestic violence is an abusive behavior in any relationship by one intimate partner to gain or maintain power and control over the other person. I'm not going to read all this, don't worry. This is domestic violence can also be called intimate partner violence. It can range from physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, economic, or psychological abuse. I pulled some statistics because I just kind of wanted to loop you in as how does domestic violence impact the kiddos in our community. So kids who witness domestic violence are 2 times more likely to either become victims or perpetrators of domestic violence. So as the children who are growing up, they have learned behavior. So they will either learn that it's okay to be victimized and they will stay, or they will see that it's okay to treat their partner in a way that's not appropriate. I couldn't find a more recent number than 2018, but in 2018 in Arizona only, there's at least 86 homicides due to domestic violence. And 1 in 4 women in their lifetime will be a victim of sexual violence, physical violence, or stalking by an intimate partner, and 1 in 10 men. And this can be any sexuality of a relationship. It can be basically anyone. So how does domestic violence affect kiddos? Research has shown that they're seeing their parents or a parent and their significant other or anybody that is living in the home have domestic violence outbursts in the house. With domestic violence, about 30 to 60% of the families that during this study reported that there's also child abuse. So when there's domestic violence, it's pretty highly likely that there's going to be child abuse in the home as well if there's kiddos living in the home. 2010, 1 in 15 children in the United States were exposed to intimate partner violence. 43% of domestic violence incidents with females, children were living in the home during the incident. So again, they're seeing this behavior. How is the CASA program involved? So we are special advocate volunteers that are appointed to Department of Child Safety cases, which are child abuse cases once the child's removed from the home and the case is open. So domestic violence, and just as an example of a situation where a CASA volunteer can be involved, there'll be domestic violence. And then we saw that statistic of about 30 to 60% of those cases will also have child abuse. Department of Child Safety, I might refer to them as DCS. They will go out and do an investigation. If, depending on their findings, the judge will rule it a dependency, child's removed from the home. And once there's that case, then a CASA volunteer can be assigned to the case. Just an example situation of how a case might be opened that's involving domestic violence. So if the police respond to a domestic violence call, they find that a child has also been abused in this situation and the parents are not able to protect the kiddo. So either mom or dad is physically abusive, it could be a girlfriend, boyfriend, and the one parent is unable to protect their child and they are also being abused or neglected. Another one, a child can come into the system by anybody can call the child abuse hotline on suspicion of child abuse. So when someone calls the hotline, then it goes to DCS and they'll rank it on the level of seriousness, and then they'll go into the home. If they discover that there's domestic violence, parents again can't keep the child safe. Parent may not want to leave the abusive partner, then the child would be removed. It depends on, every situation is different, but this is just an example of how a child might come into care due to domestic violence. Here's a couple numbers. I have this up at the end as well. There are some hotlines and their websites are really cool. If anybody has researched domestic violence or gone online, most websites have an exit number. It's like an emergency exit button on the website. So if you're scared to look up any of these resources, there is an exit button at the top of it's usually on the top right of these websites that you can exit, and it'll take you to some random website like the Humane Society, and you can say, oh, I was just looking at dogs in the shelter. So that's kind of good to know. I'll have these up again, and I do have some resources. If anybody would like them, let me know. I can send them over to Stephen and get you some links if you want to look into any of these numbers further. I'm going to dive into the CASA role. So our mission of CASA is to advocate for the best interests of abused and neglected children in the courts. So we are community volunteers certified. You'll be certified and trained by the Arizona Supreme Court. We provide advocacy to make sure each child has a safe and permanent home. Again, CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate. Our CASA volunteers are advocates who act as the eyes and ears of the judge. So they'll go out and they'll find out all the information. They're kind of like the investigators, and they can pull more information than, say, a DCS case manager can, because DCS case managers will have 30 or so children on their caseload, whereas a CASA volunteer will have one case. So they might have one sibling, or they might have 3 kiddos on the same case. And it's up to each CASA volunteer if they feel ready to take on more cases. We always welcome that because you're advocating for more kiddos. Some facts and stats in the CASA system right now. So removed from their homes, this is only Arizona, there's over 13,500 children ages 0 to 17 who are currently removed from their home, not living with their parents due to abuse or neglect. So this could be they're living with a grandma, grandpa, aunt, sister, sibling, adult sibling. They could be in a licensed foster home, a group home, shelter, rehab center, you name it. That's 13,500 children just in Arizona alone. So that number always, it's just blows our mind that we have that many kiddos that are removed from the homes in Arizona. And we have about 1,200 CASA volunteers. So 1,200 CASA volunteers, 13,500 kiddos. So that's part of my job, is to try to recruit volunteers, because in a dream world, we will have a CASA volunteer on every single child that's removed from their home and experiencing abuse or neglect. We are serving about 1,500 kids right now. So that means 12,000 children don't have a CASA volunteer. Who can be a CASA? No experience is required. Anybody that is a permanent resident of the community, you are assigned to a case. So you would be going to court hearings, visiting the child. So we can't have people that aren't here for the full year, because you are that consistent person in the child's life. Most often you're the only consistent adult in the child's life, and you're actually a volunteer. So when you go and meet your kiddo, when you tell them you're a volunteer, like, I'm not getting paid to be here, I want to be here and help you, have the best outcome in your case, get permanency. I want to see you receive all of the services. They're normally pretty taken aback, because kiddos in the child welfare system will have multiple case managers. They will have, they'll switch schools. Their friends will go in and out of their life, family members. So when they have that CASA volunteer going with them from home to home to make sure that they're being advocated for in court, it's pretty impactful. Some roles that a CASA volunteer is responsible for. So you will maintain a relationship with the kiddo. It might take a little bit. The children who are in child welfare are usually a little bit hesitant to trust an adult, which seemingly so. So you will, see the kiddo at least every month, but that's up to the volunteer. They can see them more. It can just be to stop by and say hi. You can go help them with their homework. You can take them to a baseball game, but you're also researching all of the facts of the case in that time. So it can be fun. You can make it fun, but you're also going to go talk to the group home manager, to the foster placement, see how the kiddo's doing. Our CASA volunteers really dive deep into the child's life, because that you can find out so much more information having one case versus multiple. So in many times we'll find a CASA volunteer that will call DCS and be like, hey, they have an aunt that lives close by. Why are they living in foster care when they have an aunt that they haven't talked to in a little while, but maybe they could be placement? So we're always trying to find a way for the kiddos to stay with family. We don't want to separate these family bonds or anything like that. So our CASA volunteers definitely have more impact than you realize in your other typical volunteer roles. You'll monitor the child placement, observe their behavior. You might realize, oh, their behavior is a little off lately. Maybe they need to get into more intensive counseling, or they need an individualized education plan set up for them. So you'll identify the services that they need, say the IEP, that they're a little bit struggling in school. Maybe we can set them up for tutoring. There's a ton of resources that we have for kiddos in foster care. They can make recommendations to the judge. So every time there is a court hearing, our CASA volunteers will submit a court report, and in that you can make recommendations. Say, hey, there's an aunt that lives close by. Everything has to go through the judge for the judge to order, okay, let's move, let's make sure that they're safe, do a home study, and then let's get the kiddo moved in with the aunt and out of foster care. So the CASA program is actually nationwide. There's more than 950 programs throughout the United States. And so we're a member of their program, and they've done research, and they have found that a child with CASA volunteers is more likely to receive services, half as likely to re-enter foster care. So a child with a CASA, if they, successfully reunify with their parents, if they have a CASA volunteer, they're half as likely to come back into care. That is amazing. A kiddo with a CASA volunteer is more likely to succeed in school. Again, our CASA volunteers can advocate for tutoring, set them up for services, can talk to the teachers and be like, hey, what's kind of going on? Like, is there something that we need to focus on that can better serve Johnny's needs in school so he can be successful in his future? Kiddos with a CASA volunteer are more likely to find a safe, permanent home and spend less time in foster care. So we're all here for the kids. We, as a CASA program and CASA volunteers, that's our main focus. That's why I go out and recruit. Our volunteers don't get paid. We just want more people to be there for our kiddos in the community. So because we only have about 1,200 volunteers and there's over 13,000 children in care, the cases that CASA volunteers are assigned to are more often the difficult ones. If they came back into the system, if they really need someone to have extra eyes on this kiddo, the judge can ask for a CASA to be assigned to the case. I will get calls and parents where the children were removed from will be like, hey, I heard about this CASA program and I think that will really benefit my kid. How do I go about requesting a CASA volunteer? So in Arizona, we have a CASA program in all 15 counties. So each county has their own staff and they do their recruiting there. So you can go onto the specific website where the case is. Say if the case opened in Maricopa County or if it opened in Coconino County, you can go onto their website. So it'll be CASA of Coconino County or maricopacasa.org, and you can request a CASA to be assigned to the case. And then it'll kind of bump up and they'll look at it and see if we can get a CASA volunteer assigned as they sign up, or if their case closes and they're ready to take another case. To be a volunteer, you do have to be able to read and write English because you are going to court, you're writing a court report. You must be a US citizen or legal resident. You have to be at least 21 years old. Some counties can make it a little bit older than that. I think some counties are 25, but we do that because of the background checks. So it is a thorough background check. You'll go through fingerprinting, make sure that we'll look at the driving record. We'll look at if you have any child abuse history in the system, and you'll also do a polygraph exam. The polygraph exam, it might sound scary, or you might be excited to take the polygraph exam. It's just making sure that you're telling the truth on all of the questions that we ask in the fingerprinting and all of that. We make sure that our kiddos are not going to be re-victimized. They've already gone through enough. That's the last thing that we're going to do. So that's why we have a thorough background check. You don't have to have any experience. You don't have to be a lawyer. You don't have to have any experience working with kiddos. You just have to have the heart to want to be there for a child in your community. It's about 15 to 20 hours a month that we ask that you'll dedicate to the case. So this is between visiting the kiddo, talking to their teacher. You might talk to their parents and find out, what can help him or her and better provide services for the kiddo. It sounds like a lot, but if you think about it, how many hours a week are you watching TV? If you watch 2 shows, that's 2 hours a week. That's at least 10 hours a month. So it's really a small number, and you'll have a huge impact on these kiddos' lives. We do training, so you'll be prepared, and there's staff that will walk alongside you and make sure that you're comfortable before we send you off and into your role as a CASA volunteer. So we also have a program, it's called Kokasa. If you decide that, oh, this sounds really cool, but I don't know about writing a court report, or I don't really have the experience of going and talking to kids, that's something that I'm not that comfortable with, you can become a CASA with a friend, a neighbor, a boss, anybody, and you can co-CASA onto one case. So like you can say, okay, I like talking to kids, I'll make all of the notes, and then you can write the report, or you're better at talking to teachers, and we'll work on the court report together. So this is a really great option for anybody who's interested in being a CASA volunteer. You can go through training and all of that together and get assigned to the same case. Our application is online, so on our main CASA of Arizona website, you can find your local program. So everywhere there's a black dot, there's a CASA program. And so you'll go to the website, fill out the online application. It's a little lengthy, you have to have references and talk about some of your backgrounds, but you can save it and come back to it later. Here are those resources for domestic violence again. I can probably copy and paste them into the chat box too if you wanted to save them. Does anybody have any questions?
Savannah, I'm really thankful for you coming today, and yeah, we're a pretty quiet group before our second cup of coffee. So I'm going to introduce the mayor and allow him to say a few things, and then Councilmember Thomason. And we're sure appreciative of you coming with us to join us this morning.
Thank you so much.
Mayor Dan Wellner.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Savannah, very much for the great information. I wasn't up to speed on the program, and I think it's terrific. If we can help publicize it in any way, as you've been doing, please let us know. And our gratitude for what you're doing for kids that are going through tough times and at-risk kids. It's really amazing, and please extend the thanks to everybody in the organization, and hopefully we can find some new interested folks to help out. That would be great. So thanks again for the service to the community and for what you're doing for kids.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Thomason.
Thank you, Chief. Savannah, thank you for joining us this morning. I've had the privilege to volunteer for the court system as well, not in anything nearly as meaningful as you do, but you tell the story of the children's need, or the kiddos as you call them. You tell their story of need so beautifully, and you're a great advocate for the program. So thank you for what you do, and welcome to PV, at least virtually.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen, do you have some messages for the community?
I don't have any other information here. If there are any other questions that do come up, feel free always to reach out to us. We're always here, and there's another resource here in the community for you as well. So that's everything that I have for you.
Savannah, thanks again for joining us. Remember your 9 o'clock walks, ladies and gentlemen. Just make sure that you're getting your keys out of your cars, locking your doors, taking your valuables out of your cars. When you come back in, lock your residence doors and set your alarm to stay. Thanks for joining us so much this month, and we'll see you next month for another cup of coffee. I appreciate you showing this morning. Thank you again, Savannah.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your week.